property tax protest deadline is approaching, and why do we care? Hey folks, this is DFW Real Estate Weekly, and I am Todd Tremonti. Got the whole crew here together today to talk about property taxes in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. A lot of this is tied to Texas, so it's statewide, but we are going to get into some of the nitty-gritty of the DFW area and how property taxes have such a massive impact on not just buying and selling real estate, but obviously the ongoing ownership and cost and complexity of owning real estate. So we're getting into it today. Why does this conversation matter? Obviously, most of us, would like to keep our tax bill, our tax burden down. We don't want to be paying any more taxes than we need to. There's quite a bit of a conversation going on locally and nationally that Texas has rather high property taxes. Now, there's an argument to be made as to why that's not the worst thing. We don't have other state and local taxes as much as others. And so we're going to get into all of that as we make our way through the episode. But first and foremost, we're getting into the fact that property taxes are a major factor in homeownership, and there is a deadline approaching on May 15th.
That's not long.
It's not very long at all, which is, in fact, Ian, why we're talking about it right now.
Makes
As a matter of fact, we actually had a different plan for this episode, and the team got our heads together, strategized, and said, no, the people need
to bring
this episode
to the people.
This is what we do. We take care of our listeners, our viewers, our friends, our clients, and this is a banger. This one's important. So here's the deal. You can protest the valuation that the local taxing authority has put on your home, right? So your property tax valuation is done in a sort of methodical way. You then have the right to protest. I don't think your valuation is correct. And so there's a whole process you can go through. You can go manually, personally, and protest your individual home. And you can try to put together some information and go see if you can earn a hearing. And if you get a hearing, then you go to the hearing and you say, this is why I think you valued it too high. And this is the data. Other homes sold, or you have the square footage wrong, or you show that I have an accessory building and I don't have that, or you show that I have a fourth bedroom and I don't have that. Or your information is correct, but my neighbors' houses that are like mine are lower. Why is mine higher? So
wait, you bring up a good point because you're talking about representing yourself.
Yep.
I'm getting letters and emails about people wanting to do this for me.
Yep. So we were going to get to that. Thank you for bringing that up. Your mailbox probably exploded over the last 30 days-ish, depending on when you're listening to this.
Figuratively speaking.
Through the month of late March and April. Yes, metaphorically exploded with lots of mail.
I was going to say, a bunch of exploding like mailboxes, that would be terrifying.
No, I'm really glad you clarified. I think it's helped.
You.
I think it's helped the listeners.
That is why I'm here.
So you probably got a bunch of letters and postcards from companies saying that they can help you protest your property taxes, and they can. But you don't have to hire anyone to do this. You could do this on your own at no cost other than your time and your effort to gather some quality information. Because if you go in and request a hearing and you actually get a hearing and you have no real quality information, you're kind of going to get, tossed to the side pretty quickly. Again, metaphorically.
Right.
Just you're going to be basically told that's not good enough. Move on. No change. If you gather really good information, and we offer to our clients and friends and listeners that we will provide a professional opinion of value letter. So we'll go do a deep dive valuation. We'll give you the data and we'll give you a letter of our opinion of what your value is. So if you want that, you can just reach out to us at toddtremontiteam.com. Now, you can do that yourself, though. There's a lot of things you shouldn't do, though. One of the big glaring ones is like, don't go to Zillow and just use a Zestimate. That's not a good way to do it. No. Don't just go to the Central Appraisal District website and pull your data, because that's what they already have. You may go there to pull neighbors' homes data. So you might say, look, the comparison here is not accurate. But the point is, you can go do all that yourself. Now, it's also totally okay, and there's nothing wrong with these companies, Courtney, reaching out to you, because they can help you. They take the whole burden off your plate, and they only charge you a percentage of what they save you. So let's just say they saved you $5,000. They might charge 10% of that, and they might get $500. The difference is you're going to save the $5,000 on your annual tax bill, and you're going to pay them their fee at the time they've done that. So it might actually be a little bit more out of pocket right now that you expected to pay them. But over the course of the year, you are going to actually save whatever they saved you. So they can be a great service. I have used them. I often still do use them. So I'm not here to vilify them, but you don't need them. You don't have to have another third-party company. In my experience, they're about as successful as you would be on your own, but you don't have to do it. So you can save the money and do it yourself, and I think you got a decent chance. You can pay the money if they save you and have them do it all for you. I think it's about the same. Ian was saying earlier that he's found he's had much more success.
Yeah, not to brag, but I'm 0 for 10 with companies and I'm 1 for 1 by myself.
Dang. High odds.
Again, I'm not bragging. Though.
That's what we call anecdotal evidence. But as 100% of the time, he's done it himself, folks. So listen, I'm not here to promote any of the companies. I'm just here to tell you, you have both options. Neither one is necessarily right or wrong, but for a lot of people, they want to do it themselves. So they'll do it themselves. You can also hire a company. Okay, so here's what we got. It is the season for that, and you're basically running out of time. So if you want to do that, you need to go onto the website for your county appraisal district. If you're in a little bitty outer lying county, they may not have a website. So you need to call the central appraisal district for your area and find out the process. For most of us, it's going to be on a website. There's going to be a link that says protests, and then you're going to be able to follow their step-by-step process, which is usually pretty simple. It's usually print a form, fill it out, send it in, or bring it by, and then they'll take it from there, whether they'll schedule a hearing or not. And then if they have a hearing, they'll tell you what you can and can't do with that hearing. If you hire a service, they'll handle it all for you. But it's getting very, very, very late to hire a service because you're going to have to give them some basic information, and then they're going to go do the rest, and they have to do all that by the deadline.
Is the deadline like just to submit my request?
Yes.
And then I can get my ish together?
Once you have to follow their system by the deadline. Now, by the deadline, after the deadline, they might say, okay, we've scheduled a hearing for you and that kind of thing.
Okay, I just want people to feel like they have time.
Filled out, and they don't have much, but they do still have time to print the thing, fill out the paperwork, and submit it. Okay? And then at the hearing, you would bring all your evidence and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
I know there's a lot more to talk about.
Yep.
But my question in the middle of the logistics is, how do I interpret the conversation in the news about what Governor Abbott is promising to do and wanting to eliminate?
Yeah, so this is not unique to Texas, but Texas is one of the higher property tax states. And so it's still a very attractive state to live in. And a lot of people move here because we don't have a state income tax and other things. So look, one way or the other,
they're going to get theirs.
They're going to get their money, right? So lots of politicians in recent elections, and it's been a deal forever and ever, but it's really heated up in the last 8-ish years.
I remember we've talked a lot about this probably 2, 3, 4 years ago.
Huffines had billboards all the way up and down the highway. Now you've got Abbott. It's PACs. I mean, they've all weighed in on the issue. But Governor Abbott is saying that he expects to succeed with legislation that will basically cut property tax for residential homeowners about in half. And basically what he's saying is they're going to fund the schools differently. We're no longer going to tax homeowners based on their property value, on their tax assessment to fund the schools.
Crazy.
Now, he's not saying we're not going to fund schools, so don't freak out. He's just saying we're going to get the money for the schools a different way out of the state budget because, honestly, we already have the money and we're spending it poorly on other stuff. Now, look, I don't care what your politics is. For almost everybody, this would be a good thing. If it's true, if they can fund the schools through existing taxes without raising other taxes and free you up on your home.
It's currently at a 10% annual increase.
So it's capped at a 10% increase. So let's say your tax valuation last year.
An essential word.
It's a very important word.
It is a very essential word.
No, I know. I'm calling myself out.
No, I'm glad you said that because a lot of people don't understand these things and they feel silly not understanding it. So they don't admit that they don't understand and they're just writing a check every year. They don't really know what for or why. So your local taxes are often state, some county, local city, could be the school district, almost always. And then sometimes there's a hospital district or a bond that everybody voted on in your area for the schools or something, parks and recreation or something like that. So it's it could be a lot of different things. Many, many, many people don't know how their tax rate became their tax rate. And then the school says we need a new natatorium and it's only going to be 3 cents per $1,000 of value, and everybody's like, oh, that's nothing. Sure, let's vote for it. The kids need the pool. And I'm not even saying that's right or wrong. I'm just saying that's how your tax rate becomes your tax rate. Most of these things have to be voted on. Now, there are some things that legislation's always being argued that people need to be better informed when they're voting on that, or that should require a higher percentage of voting approval and all that kind of stuff. This show is brought to you by the Todd Tremonti Home Selling Team, where we guarantee to sell your home over the average price and under the average time. We also guarantee to help you buy a home and save at least $5,000 throughout the purchase process. Check out over 800 5-star reviews on Google. We'll get back to the show. So there's just kind of a rapid fire kind of what's happening. State of Florida has been really aggressive with this as well and seems to be making some real progress. And then honestly, just adjacent to this, the President Trump and his administration are saying they want to do away with income taxes. I'm not saying that is the same as this. I'm saying they're related. Like, municipalities need a certain amount of tax revenue. Most of us would say they don't need as much as they take because they spend it poorly. But all these things affect each other. So in the state of Texas, the governor is saying he believes he'll be able to reduce it by 50. We'll leave it there and just say who knows. But that's what's being proposed. Lots of other people running for office are suggesting other types of solutions, total eradication. One of the arguments here is that you can't ever truly own property in Texas because let's say you buy a house and you pay cash, or you get a mortgage and you pay it off. You still don't fully own it in this argument because if you don't pay your taxes, they will come take your house. So therefore, you can't ever be truly free and clear because you're going to owe property taxes forever. I think that's a relatively honest, fair argument. The biggest piece of this is senior citizens, right? So you've retired, you're no longer actively earning an income. Maybe you have Social Security or a pension or something like that, and you've paid your house off. So your expenses should be fixed, but your expenses are rapidly rising because your property value is rapidly rising. And so your taxes on your property value are rapidly rising. And now you have a wonderful married couple or whatever that worked hard, saved, paid their house off, and they can't afford to live in their home anymore. The taxes are going up and they're being forced out of that community. Nobody wants that to happen. So a lot of the legislation is about carving out greater exemptions for seniors or military veterans or things like that. So all of that is part of the conversation. The bullseye of what we're saying is if you want to protest, you need to do that like this week. Hurry up, hurry up, hurry up. But there's also some questions of ethics and integrity when it comes to protesting your property taxes. And I'm not saying it's good or bad to protest. What I'm saying is I believe you should never lie. So what a lot of people will do is in their protest, they're saying, I can't believe you valued my house at this. It would never sell for that. But if I knocked on their door, which I won't, as a real estate broker, and I said, hey, I'll buy your house for that right now, they would never sell it to me at that price. They just told the taxing authority, it would never sell for that. It's not worth that. And if I said, okay, well, but I'll pay you that for your house, they would be like, are you kidding? It's worth way more than that. I'm just saying you don't have to be dishonest. It's a process of taking data, providing it to the authorities and saying, look, this is the data I'm finding. Why did you price it the way you did? The tax valuation is different than a resale valuation. It's a different type of valuation. I will say this. If you buy or sell a home and that data is publicly recorded on the MLS, at the taxing authority or whatever, that is almost always going to end up being found and captured by the taxing authority, and that's going to become your new tax value. Somebody paid somebody this amount for it. Sure, we're gonna use that. That's like a cheat code shortcut to, okay, that's current market value. The market says so. So even though they're different processes of valuation, sometimes they'll cross over, sort of bridge to each other. So that's kind of what you need to know about timing. That's sort of how I approach it philosophically, and a little bit of what's happening legislatively right now. Before you guys jump in with a comment or two, I do want to just tell people, we do help our clients protest their property taxes. If you have a world-class, proven real estate professional that you've trusted for a long time with great resources and data, they might be able to help you as well. But my warning is, don't use estimates of value on big national websites. They're not going to be accurate enough, and the taxing authorities are not going to take those very seriously. What you got?
All right, so it feels as though we've been talking, and when we're talking about this, a lot of it applies to like your box standard residential property type of home. Mm-hmm. So what about homes that are on land? What about homes that are on multiple acreages, bigger lots? Like, what's the difference there? If it is one?
No, I'm glad you asked, because what we are talking about right now is your property tax on your single family personal property. There are also exemptions that affect your taxes, right? So you could have a homestead exemption because that property is your primary residence. There's a few little restrictions, but they're fairly simple. Then you could have things like an agricultural exemption. So when we start talking about homes on land, it depends on how much land. I live on a few acres. I don't have an agricultural use for my property. I'm not raising cattle or crops or wildlife for profit. So I don't have an ag exemption. I do have a homestead exemption. Now, if I had, let's say, 9 or 10 acres, it's possible that I might have a for-profit agricultural use on part of my property. So I might be able to get a homestead exemption, which would reduce my overall tax burden on the part of my property that is my homestead. And they might say that 1 acre up by the house, that's your homestead. We'll give you the exemption for that. The rest of this is for-profit, non-homestead. So we're going to tax that at a higher rate unless you have an agricultural exemption. And you have to prove your use to get these exemptions. So for it to be your homestead, you just have to prove that you live there and you've lived there for a certain amount of time, and you're not filing for that exemption on another property like that. On the agricultural, you have to prove that it is being used for for-profit agricultural use over a certain period of time. So real quick to summarize that, if you have 1 or 2 acres, that's probably not that different from a tax perspective, except for that you have more land, and the land is valued one way, and the improvement, which is the house, the structures, the infrastructure on that property, is valued separately. So you're going to see a slightly different approach to valuation because more of your value will be tied to land because more of your property is land. Some people will be trying to figure out which or how many exemptions they could get and which parts of their property have those exemptions. But you can protest both.
Now, you can't just get like an ag exemption because you have chickens in your backyard.
You cannot. Now, for years and years and years, especially in the state of Texas, they were very casual with the ag exemption. So it was like, I have a horse, I have an ag exemption. I have some chickens, I have an ag exemption. 10 to 15 years ago, they started to crack down, and they weren't changing the rules. They were just actually finally enforcing them a little more, where you had to have 5 years of established for-profit agricultural use. Now, agriculture could be 100 cattle, or it could be 2 little ponies. It could be 50 chickens, but it had to be a for-profit use that validated the use of the amount of land that you're wanting. So if you had 10 chickens and 100 acres, there's no way you're getting that exemption. But you might get it on 5 acres with 20 or 30 or 40 chickens. I know people that have ag exemptions because they're put bird houses on their property to support the maintaining migratory birds. I mean, literally, like, they barely ever see these birds, but they're doing what the state wants. And by the way, all taxes, tax incentives, tax deductions, exemptions, all these things are to drive activity. That the IRS or the state is saying, we want people to do this, so we'll give them an incentive to do this. Your mortgage interest is deductible because the government has decided it's a good thing for people to own homes. It helps keep people in communities. They pay for things. They invest in schools and things. So we want more people to own homes. So we're going to make it a little bit of a tax benefit to live in and own that home. We're going to make it a little bit of a tax benefit to invest in your business. We'll give you some write-offs and things because we want businesses to operate and employ people. So that's part of the agricultural exemption, is we need people to raise crops and support wildlife and provide food and things like that. So we're going to give you a little tax benefit to do that.
Our neighborhood has migrating geese that spend the summers and springs with us.
The Canadian geese.
Ag exemption?
Go for it, is what I would say. Probably not a 1-for-1 like your residential protest, but hey, let me know how it works.
All right, let you know.
So that's a rapid fire on property tax exemptions. But the short story here is, if you want to protest, you're running out of time. We could help you if you need it. Those companies and services could help you for a fee. We do it for free for our clients. We don't go protest for you, but we'll help you provide the data. And if we can help you, just go to ToddTremontiTeam.com. And, let us know if these episodes are valuable for you. Give us a like, leave us a review, share it with a friend if it's helpful, and we will talk to you on the next one.